Tonight on Primetime Politics, putting the carbon tax front and center.
A carbon tax fraud has been perpetrated by this NDP Liberal Prime Minister.
The House is back and Conservatives are pushing for a carbon tax election.
Why not allow Canadians to vote to axe the tax?
But the Prime Minister is sticking to his guns.
Here's a news flash for the Conservative leader. Climate change costs money, and what would cost the most money to Canadians at all is his do-nothing climate plan.
Coming up, we will speak to the party House leaders about day one of what is already shaping up to be a raucous fall session. The Liberals now without a working majority, while Conservatives push New Democrats to bring the government down. This is Primetime Politics. Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. Even before the House of Commons returned, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre promised to introduce a motion of non-confidence determined to bring the government down. The Tories do continue to enjoy a double-digit lead over the governing Liberals, carried by a message to axe the government's carbon tax, which Conservatives blame for affordability struggles Canadians continue to face. It all sets up what is expected to be a very contentious fall sitting as Parliament returns.
What I heard yesterday from Mr. Poilievre was so over the top, so irresponsible, so immature, and something that only a fraudster would do. When he is focused on having an election on the carbon price, what he's trying to do is distract Canadians from his real agenda.
The government House Leader Karina Gould. Now, we should note Parliament's return is also expected to be more challenging for the Trudeau Liberals now that their supply and confidence agreement with the NDP is over. And to talk about all of this, we're now joined by Karina Gould. Minister, nice to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So here we are, day one of Parliament's return, and it seems the gloves are already off. As we heard, you held your first news conference today. You called the Conservative leader a fraudster. Why the need to do that?
Well, because he's not being honest with Canadians. Like I heard his rhetoric yesterday about the price on pollution, and it was so over the top, so misleading, and so dishonest with Canadians that, you know, enough is enough when it comes to misleading Canadians. I think it's time for him to face scrutiny. It's time for him to be honest about what his actual plans are, and it's time for him to stop conveniently forgetting the whole policy with regards to the price on pollution. The fact that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back in the carbon rebate than they do in terms of paying that price. So I think it's just time that Canadians get to see him for who he is.
See him for who he is, as you say, but at the same time, you know, the Conservatives, as you know, still enjoy a double-digit lead over your own party. The Conservative leader is already on record as saying that once an opposition day happens, they are going to introduce a motion of non-confidence. You say that an opposition day is going to come soon. What are we talking about here? Days, weeks?
It'll come soon. So, you know, we have 11 and a half sitting weeks this session, and there are 7 opposition days. It's, you know, normal that in the first week we don't have an opposition day, but there will be 7 opposition days. They'll happen in due course as they normally do.
Okay, so that seems to underline a bit of confidence on your part, the fact that you're not going to delay an opposition day when the Conservatives are promising to introduce this motion of non-confidence. Does that confidence stem from belief in the popularity of your policies or belief that no other party is going to take them up on the offer?
Well, we'll just have to see how it goes. I mean, look, we're not afraid of a Conservative opposition day motion. It's part of the regular business of the House, and that regular business is going to continue. For me, what's important as government House leader is, you know, doing the work. The Conservative leader, in particular, but his MPs as well, they're about playing political games and pulling cheap political stunts. My job is to, you know, see the work of the government through. It's to make Parliament work, and you know, I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues in the other parties to do just that for Canadians.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what that means, though, because you know, as you and I are talking here, I'm thinking about the Prime Minister who did visit Sault Ste. Marie last month in Ontario, and while he was there, this union steelworker refused to shake Mr. Trudeau's hand. He doesn't think your government is doing enough to make his life more affordable because, as he said it, he has his own dental plan. He says that he pays 40% of his income and taxes. How will your government be addressing those kinds of concerns in the session ahead? Because, again, you're trailing the Conservatives here. You say that their message, I guess, obscures what they're really going to do, but their message is really being believed in by many Canadians right now.
Well, because he's not telling the full truth, right? Because he's hiding what his true agenda is. And, you know, what we've heard about from Mr. Poilievre in terms of what his plans are, you know, he says he cares about the cost of living for Canadians, but when it comes to seniors, for example, he wants to raise the age of retirement, he wants to cut pensions, and he wants to get rid of the dental plan. Those are all things that matter to seniors. When it comes to families, you know, he wants to get rid of the child care program and get rid of school food, things that make Canadians' lives more affordable. And we know that the Conservative plan when it comes to supporting families, we have the Canada Child Benefit that can give hundreds of dollars a month tax-free to families. The Conservative plan is to get rid of that and do a taxable benefit that goes to everybody. You know, he doesn't want Canadians to know what his plans are. That's why he's focused on the price on pollution and omitting half of the story, because that way he hopes that people won't actually dig a layer deeper. And, you know, frankly, Canadians are smarter than that. And, you know, here we are in the lead up to an election. It's time for him to ask answer some serious questions. And we see what happens when serious questions are posed to him. He gets defensive, he attacks journalists, he attacks Canadians, he denigrates people. You know, that's not how serious leaders act in this country, and I think Canadians deserve better than that.
So how do you convince Canadians of that? Again, your party is trailing right now, and you as government House Leader needs to shepherd through policies, but at the same time, make an argument to Canadians. So how do you make that argument when for the last year they haven't been listening to that argument?
Well, in fairness, you know, Canadians often tune into an election during the election campaign. And, you know, I'm also going to say that I understand where Canadians are right now. You know, have come out of a global pandemic that threw kind of everything out of order. We were facing global inflation that had a huge impact on the cost of food, on the cost of fuel. You know, Canadians are facing tougher economic times right now. So I understand where they are. But the fact of the matter is that if someone tells you that they have a magic solution to fix that, it's just not true. There are a lot of different things that we have to do that, in fact, as a government, we have been doing to try and make it a softer landing for Canadians. And so that's part of the argument that we have to keep moving forward with over the coming months and into the coming year.
Mm-hmm. Now, there has been some speculation of a possible proroguement on behalf of your government, and there are two by-elections being held today, one in Montreal, the other in the Winnipeg area, as you know. Montreal, though, like Toronto, is historically a Liberal stronghold. If your party loses the race in LaSalle-Imard-Verdun, would your government consider proroguing Parliament to reflect on how that kind of loss would or should change government thinking right now? Well,
we are here to do the work for Canadians. We have lots of important legislation in front of the House of Commons that we want to move forward, that we want to deliver for Canadians. There is no plan to prorogue Parliament. It is about being here, working with the other parties and delivering on a progressive agenda for Canadians.
Karina Gould, thank you for this. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure, Michael. Always a pleasure.
Well, with more on Parliament's return and opposition priorities, we're now joined by Andrew Scheer, the Conservative House Leader, and Peter Julian, the NDP House Leader. Welcome back to the two of you. Good to see you.
Good to be with you.
Listen, Mr. Scheer, I'll begin with you because, you know, we just spoke with Karina Gould. The government House Leader says your party will get an opposition day soon. So I'm wondering two things. First and foremost, do you understand what she means by soon? And two, is it guaranteed that the first motion that your party will raise will be a motion of non-confidence?
Well, the expectation is that soon would be sometime in the first couple of weeks back. So if we don't get it in the next couple of weeks, we'll start to raise the alarm that this is yet another broken promise. As to your question about the nature of that, it's been we've made it very clear that Canadians have a choice. They have a choice between the NDP Liberal plan to hike the carbon tax up to 61 cents a litre, which would be devastating for the economy, to continue doubling down on failed crime policies that unleash dangerous offenders into our communities, and a home building program that doesn't build any homes, or the Conservative plan to axe the tax entirely, keep dangerous criminals behind bars longer, and build the homes. Our message is, let's give Canadians that choice as quickly as possible. Let's let Canadians choose between the Liberal NDP plan to keep hiking that carbon tax, keep destroying our economy, or the Conservative plan to lower that tax and allow Canadians to keep more of their hard-earned paycheck. So that's what we'll be pushing for, and we'll be doing that through a motion of non-confidence. We hope that the NDP were serious about ripping up that agreement, and that means that they will allow Canadians to pronounce on which direction they want the country to go in.
Okay, Mr. Julian, you know, the ball was thrown to you there by Mr. Scheer. Your leader says that you will not be pressured into joining any type of non-confidence vote. You'll make the decision yourselves. But if you are breaking the deal with the Liberals, if you are now criticizing the carbon tax as it is, why not just vote with Conservatives and bring the Trudeau government down?
Well, first off, I mean, the reason why the Conservatives are yet again raising this is because they're seeing what the results have been over the course of the summer of Canadians signing up for the dental care plan. 650,000 Canadians have benefited from the NDP's work, from Jagmeet Singh and the NDP's work to get people to have access to dental care. And pharmacare will be passed through the Senate hopefully in just a couple of weeks. We've already got provinces that are signing on, which will mean 6 million Canadians with diabetes and up to 10 million Canadians who use contraception will finally have access. This will make a big difference for people that are struggling to make ends meet. We don't take our instructions from Pierre Poilievre. He's got the terrible judgment. Obviously, his support, I think people are finding him wanting. You can see in more recent polls that support for him is softening. The reality is what Jagmeet Singh and the NDP will be doing is proceeding vote by vote. We'll be making sure for every vote that we do the best due diligence to make sure it's in the interest of the public. And you'll recall, through COVID, that is what made the huge difference for people getting through the COVID pandemic. The NDP forced the government to put in supports for small businesses, for students, for seniors, for people with disabilities, for families. All during COVID, when the Conservatives weren't actually proposing anything concrete, the NDP was working hard vote by vote to make sure that there were programs put in place to support Canadians. And that's how we'll proceed with this fall session.
Okay, you know, Mr. Scheer, I'm going to pick up on a point there that we heard there from Mr. Julian, because the government House Leader, Karina Gould, she did call your leader, Pierre Poilievre, a fraudster today, essentially accusing him of torquing up rhetoric around the carbon tax to obscure the kind of cuts Conservatives would introduce if and when the party forms government. So I wonder, beyond the carbon tax, what else would your party cut? The universal dental care program, pharmacare? Because those are the things that, as you heard Mr. Julian address, others are addressing around your push to get a vote now.
Well, first of all, if we want to talk about fraud, let's talk about Justin Trudeau promising Canadians before the 2019 election that he would never raise the carbon tax. That was a solemn vow that he then immediately broke when he didn't need Canadians' votes anymore, but he still needed their money. He's in the process of quadrupling that with the support of the NDP. That would have a devastating impact on the Canadian economy. And the Department of the Environment was even trying to hide the true cost to the overall economy. Now we know, because we uncovered those documents, that it's going to be almost $30 billion when it's fully implemented. So these are the types of frauds that have been perpetrated on the Canadian people. The NDP and the Liberals, they never want to talk about cutting government waste. If you look at the $35 billion infrastructure bank, that's an easy target for tax savings because it hasn't completed a single project. The Liberals, with the support of the NDP, have ballooned the costs of high-priced consultants like McKinsey, giving out hundreds of millions of dollars in new contracts to outside contractors that are replicating and duplicating the work of our public service. We've seen the Green Slush Fund get $1 billion that the Auditor General flagged was going to companies that had close Liberal ties, massive amounts of conflicts of interest, and projects getting funding that had no environmental benefit. And, you know, at the end of the day, all this government spending, borrowing, spending, keeps inflation high, keeps interest rates high. So whatever relief the NDP and Liberals try to keep you focused on, they don't ignore the fact that they're still taking a bite of your paycheck. They're still devaluing the hard-earned dollar that you've gone out and gone to work for, and they're still raising taxes. So it's the Conservative approach that's actually going to fix the budget so inflation, prices, and interest rates can come down, and to axe the carbon tax so Canadians don't have to pay just to eat and heat their homes.
Okay, but of all the spending,
I mean, we saw Harper and the Harper government. We saw massive spending. It was all given to billionaires. We saw the Harper tax treaties, $30 billion a year going offshore. And we saw the scandal, CTS scandal that the Conservatives shut down, and the use of consultants. I mean, give me a break. This happened under the Conservatives. They started it. The Conservatives are the ones that have been.
helped the Liberals.
Let me jump in. Let me jump in, though. Let me jump in. Mr. Julian,
the bottom of each of these problems.
Okay, let me jump in, though, because I hear what you're saying, Mr. Julian. But, you know, when you list out the things that you would, for example, save money on, Mr. Scheer, does that mean then that you as your party in government, would not touch universal dental care, would not touch pharmacare, would not touch childcare? Is that what you're saying? That the cost savings would be in other areas, not in those areas which, you know, the Liberals and NDP say are in jeopardy if you become government?
What we're saying is that every time we talk about fiscal restraint, getting the government's borrowing costs now, do you know that Canadians now spend more in taxes than all other necessities combined, like housing, like food costs, clothing, and raising their children? That is a direct result of government spending ballooning, going out into the marketplace and borrowing billions and billions of dollars. That's why interest rates are high, because when the government is borrowing, they're competing with every single mortgage holder.
But would you cut the programs that have been laid out
my point
as
is,
a way
when
to
we
get
talk
that
about
balloon?
when we talk about eliminating this waste and corruption, the NDP and Liberals always like to bring up these specters of cuts to services. That is actually what happens when Liberals govern for long periods of time. It was the previous Liberal government that hacked and slashed healthcare for provinces because they had essentially bankrupted the country. So my point is, we will be unveiling a comprehensive platform that will speak exactly how we are going to spend tax dollars on behalf of Canadians. And for right now, we are concentrating on the waste, mismanagement, and corruption that the NDP are helping Justin Trudeau get away with. The NDP constantly at committees vote to adjourn meetings, vote to shut down investigations, help protect the Liberals on a political level. And we're saying if the deal is off, if it's truly off and they've ripped it up in that theatrical fashion, then let's go to the Canadian people and let them choose between a high tax plan to quadruple the carbon tax and Pierre Poilievre's plan to axe the tax and leave more money in Canadians' pockets.
Okay, I'll let you answer that, Mr. Julian.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. And the Conservatives, we saw under Harper, they shut down all of the inquiries into their corruption. The unbelievable overspending of the Harper years, the massive deficits, it was terrible on Canadians. In this Parliament, the NDP has actually been instrumental in getting to the bottom of a number of these areas where the Liberals have simply, like the Conservatives, worked to enhance corporate greed. And that's why essentially confidence in supply is no longer in place. It's because Liberals act too much like Conservatives. They're always beholden to the corporate interests, always beholden to corporate greed. During the bread price fixing scandal under the Conservatives, of course, they did nothing over a decade while Canadians were being fleeced hundreds of dollars because of corporate price fixing on bread. And what we see, of course, with Mr. Poilievre is he's not taken one stand against corporate greed, whether it's food price fixing or gas price fixing, whether it's corporate landlords to get government money and then hike up the rents. The Conservatives always side with the Liberals. They always work together to enhance corporate greed, and that's why the NDP and Jagmeet Singh are going to be offering something different to Canadians, finally putting aside corporate greed and finally investing in Canadians. And we've proven that with dental care and soon with pharmacare, we can make a difference in the lives of Canadians.
Okay, well, it is day one back. We look forward to see what happens in the weeks ahead. For now, though, Andrew Scheer, Peter Julian, thank you for the time this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, to the United States now, where a man accused of attempting to shoot Donald Trump made his first court appearance this morning. 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Routh is now facing 2 U.S. federal gun charges, 1 possessing a firearm as a felon and 2 possessing a firearm with an obliterated serial number. Both charges stemming from an incident that unfolded Sunday at Mr. Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. Police saying Mr. Routh was waiting in the bushes where the former president and current Republican nominee was playing golf. Secret Service agents reportedly spotted the barrel of the gun and opened fire. thwarting what authorities believe was a second attempt at Mr. Trump's life. The suspect was eventually apprehended and Mr. Trump was not harmed. Still, many questions are now being raised about the level of security that's required in this U.S. presidential campaign. And Mr. Trump, for his part, was quick to launch a fundraising effort on Sunday evening. With more on the incident and the fallout, we're now joined by journalist David Levinthal. David, always good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, great to be back with you.
Now, listen, of course, this story raises a lot of different questions, but we're a political show. So I do want to focus on the politics, and apologies to people that don't necessarily want to talk about that right now. But, you know, this campaign has already had a few inflection points, one of which was the first assassination attempt on Trump's life back in July. That incident and Trump's defiant exit from the stage really, invigorating Republicans going into their national convention. So I wonder, does this second attempt on Mr. Trump's life give added momentum to his campaign?
With respect to the seriousness of the situation, Michael, probably not. And here's why. This situation, the second assassination attempt, was a lot less dramatic. Now, Donald Trump, certainly in the hours after it took place, has tried to make as much of it as possible. He's used it as a fundraising opportunity. He's splashed it all over his webpage, in text messages and emails. So he's really tried to drum up support from his supporters. But a shot was not fired so far as we know. Donald Trump most certainly was not hit with a bullet, and it stands in great contrast to the situation back in July when Donald Trump was, of course, hit with a bullet and was millimeters away from potentially being killed.
So perhaps not momentum, but I'm wondering if it creates some type of pitfall for Democrats, though, because, while Democrats have been quick to denounce the second attempt, and we need to underline that fact, they have been quick, but Republicans are also accusing Democrats right now of endangering Mr. Trump's life by describing him as a danger to democracy. And take a look right now at what was said today on X, the preamble from Mr. Trump calling out what he quotes as Comrade Kamala Harris. He says, because of this communist left rhetoric, the bullets are flying and it will only get worse. So you say that this may not help Republicans, but I do wonder, Dave, if this second attempt on Trump's life essentially has the potential of creating a pitfall and hurting the Harris campaign.
And on that point, too, I don't think it necessarily will. And here's why on that. Donald Trump is, of course, very, very prone to hyperbolic rhetoric. He will make anything, any situation, whether it is quite grave and serious or trivial, into something that is a bludgeon, a weapon, a tool to hurt Democrats with. This has been his playbook for the better part of the 10 years that he has been in politics, while he was running for president, while he was president, while he was out of the White House, and now trying to get back in again. So if we look at polls a few days from now, a couple of weeks from now, I wouldn't expect there to be any demonstrable shift stemming from this incident as a result of anything that Donald Trump is saying. It will certainly play well with his base. It will rile his supporters up. But the undecided voters, the independent voters, that very small slice of the electorate here in the United States that truly matters, this is probably not going to be a game changer for them one way or another, or particularly harm Kamala Harris in the wash. Okay, so in the political discussion, it does not necessarily have an impact, according to what you're saying. But, we have had these two attempts on Donald Trump's life. So I wonder about the impact on security. How is security going to change? How will that have to be planned going forward, at events carried out not only by Donald Trump, but by Kamala Harris as well? Most notably, Michael, expect that there is going to be a lot of action this week and going forward on Capitol Hill. Congress is going to take it up. There is already a committee that had been set up for the first assassination attempt to answer exactly the kind of question that you just posed. At the same time, too, Donald Trump is a former president. There are 5 former U.S. presidents alive today. None of them, including Donald Trump, received the same level of Secret Service protection that the president of the United States gets, Joe Biden, of course, or Kamala Harris, by virtue of her being the vice president of the United States. But Donald Trump is a singular figure. He also is a figure who has businesses. He was on one of his business properties when he was playing golf when the second alleged assassination attempt took place. It's a private club. It is open to members. It has had security lapses that have been quite legion in the past. So unless you have a situation where a Donald Trump is receiving the same kind of presidential level Secret Service protection as he would get if he was actually president, there are going to be certain things that are not going to happen, including a complete shutdown of an area when Donald Trump is there. And that did not appear to be the case, and would be expected that it almost wouldn't be the case given the fact that he isn't president of the United States.
It'll be very interesting to see where the discussions go, though, given this is the second attempt. David, thank you for that. I always appreciate the time.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, time now for a look at what happened in politics today. MPs are back in Ottawa after being on summer break since June 20, and they're coming back to a new political reality after the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh tore up the supply and confidence agreement with Liberals. That leaves the question of who will support the government on confidence measures up in the air. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been calling for a carbon tax election and is promising to introduce a motion of non-confidence. As for the government House Leader Karina Gould, she says Conservatives will get a chance soon with an opposition day. So we are watching. 2 federal by-elections are taking place today, one in the Winnipeg riding of Elmwood-Transcona, the other in the Montreal riding of LaSalle et Marne-Verdun. The campaign in Elmwood-Transcona is expected to be a battle between the NDP's Leila Dance and Conservative candidate Colin Reynolds. The NDP has held the riding since 2015, but the Conservatives are fighting to capitalize on their large national polling lead, hoping for a win in the suburban riding. Meanwhile, in LaSalle et Marne-Verdun, the Liberals, the Bloc, and the NDP are all expected to be competitive in the race to replace former Justice Minister David Levinthal. The riding is historically a Liberal stronghold, but both the Bloc and the NDP are hoping for an upset. The public inquiry into foreign interference began its second round of public hearings this morning, but Commissioner Marie-Josée Hogue started the day by addressing allegations made in an NSICOP report last spring. It alleged there are sitting and former MPs who have wittingly and unwittingly aided a foreign government. Hogue was asked to look at the allegations amid pressure to reveal names.
So I would also like to state from the outset that I will not be publicly identifying parliamentarians whom NSICOP suspect of having participated in foreign interference activities or of having acted wittingly or unwittingly as agents of foreign state.
On Wednesday, former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole will testify at the inquiry, along with MPs Michael Chong and Jenny Kwan. And finally, the federal government announced 2 big changes to mortgage rules today. It is raising the price cap for insured mortgages to $1.5 million, up from $1 million. It is also expanding the 30-year mortgage amortization to all first-time home buyers. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland says both changes will be in place by mid-December.
Canada needs to get more homes built faster. In order to get those homes built faster, more people need to be there buying them. That's what this change is going to permit.
And that is our program for this Monday. For everyone here at CPAC, thank you for watching. I'm Michael Serapio. Primetime Politics is back tomorrow. Until then, take care.